It's an honor for us to be here again in a very different format, and working with such an amazing group of students and team and people is being so far an incredible experience. So next week and the week after it will be something very, very different. As Heike said, we will be on a different site and on a very different condition, doing a lot of physical work, but really we're looking really forward to that. We imagine for today kind of like a different format of a lecture, so not really the classical kind of like presentation of our work that will last for an hour, and probably after half an hour you're already a bit bored of it. So we thought that we would try something a little bit different, and let's see how it works. But it will demand a little bit of your participation. So I will do an introduction, and get ready to participate a little bit on the show, and that's also why, and I will introduce my colleagues now. We thought it was interesting to not be just Galliane and myself, who are partners, and I can actually already put this on. Galliane and myself, who are partners of the office absurdly named bureau, but also one of our dear collaborators, Pierre, who's been with us for quite a while, and also Luisa, who's someone who's been with us not so long because she's finalizing her internship, so she's a student. But we thought it was actually interesting to have multiple voices to talk about our work in a different way. But to start with, I would like to read and start with, sorry, I forgot to say that Karine, our third partner, she's not here. She will be coming actually to Rotzator in a week or so, a little bit later. For the last week. She was here actually last year with us, but we are representing her. I hope we don't do a too bad job, and she can be proud of her presentation. So let me go for it. Thank you again, NPATAK and LFA. These are the kind of contexts that we feel very, very comfortable with, despite the risk and adventures, but it's really, really an amazing place. We love to be here. I think so far it's been a very, very interesting and enriching experience. The first part is just going to take a few minutes. I'm going to read something, but since I'm a bad reader, I have copies, like 30 copies of what I'm reading. So this is a small, very, very short and very soft manifesto. Actually, it's in French. It sounds a little bit better than in English. A furnishing manifesto. So it's a manifeste d'ameublement, which talks about furniture more than architecture. So it's a very kind of like easy listening manifesto, not a very strong one. A furnishing manifesto. We work in simple, often relatively modest context. We like to say that we participate to those contexts, that we install our work within existing histories. Our project is gently political all the same, because it doesn't embrace the notion or desire for growth, because it doesn't believe in the idea of progress, because it belongs to the minor rather than the major mode. We're not going to do better or much better. Our structure isn't going to grow, and we're not going to build bigger and bigger and bigger. We're just going to keep on going. We're going to do a bit of maintenance, a bit of housework, vacuuming, raking, and sweeping to dust of the house, polish it up, and finally get rid of some of the stories that have shaped and formatted us too much. We do all of this as gently and poetically as possible within similar scales and situations where we can make a personal commitment, where we can live and continually confront ourselves to the consequences of our actions, to open ourselves up and nourish our imaginations through simple gestures, while putting aside an architectural history and culture that is struggling to demasculinize itself. It still clings rather tightly to a series of unhelpful, sometimes even useless heroes. This history, also written by the victors, the winners, fits us less and less, almost not at all. Our minor architectures with a small a, would like to come closer to Eric Satie's tiny pieces of furniture, to contribute a little bit to the lives of the people and living beings with whom we work. People and living beings with whom we share things, looks, positions, songs, environments. Not sublime houses in exceptional landscapes, but singularly modest spaces. People who have made important choices, life choices, political choices. Our work unfolds inside and outside the home, domestic and public. The domestic projects try to get rid of the notion of typology. The others are installed in everyone's exterior home, in what should be a common space, the public sphere. Here too we find art spaces, scenographies, exhibitions, installations, temporary fragments of a history that someone resists constituting a whole. The whole is less than the sum of its parts, which is a quote by Timothy Morton. So, this is where the fun starts. The lecture is over, unless you have questions. No, I'll put it simpler. The idea now is that we have a conversation. So I have a lot of stuff in my computer ready to show, and we can show a lot of projects, but we would like to show those projects by responding to your questions. So you can ask any kind of question, comments to the four of us, to one of us, to all of us, to yourselves, discuss within yourselves or with yourselves, with the different formats of people also that are here presenting our different experiences. And so I know it's a little bit hard, but maybe someone has to break the ice and then it will go very smooth. Okay? Ready? If not, we will have to go for beers already, which would be a pity, I think. Yeah? Thank you for being the first questioner. Very courageous of you.
You said that you are not going to build something bigger.
Yeah.
Does it mean that you are at your top and there are not much place to progress?
Yeah, when we say that we don't want to go bigger, there is few meaning of that. It means that we don't want to build huge buildings. Also regarding what we are doing in the office, this is not really our purpose. We prefer maybe to develop our practice in smaller scale. It can be also bigger, but sometimes when your office become too big, you lose the relationship with all the team and you become to be a manager. And Daniel had a previous office, I mean, quite huge one. And this is my first office and I would like to keep this office. And for that, I really love the small scale. I mean, for the office, but because I love to be in relation with people in the office, to take time to be able to come here with quasi the entire office that we have. We can spend 3 weeks here, spending time with people, discover a lot of stuff together. And if we have people in the office about 30, 40, this would be not possible at all. And we will become to be manager and not architect or art director anymore. And this is a huge difference. And I mean, it's bigger in terms of scale for the building, but also in scales of the office that we have and the team that we want to have.
I can add something to that. When in the small manifesto we say that it's kind of political, which is a very, very big word, as you can imagine. The whole idea of the office is exactly that. Political, meaning that we want to keep a very, very reduced size, so we can do exactly things like this, that we can do workshops or be out of the office or do projects like this one, which is obviously extremely small. And then we can talk about economics later if you want, but you know, how does an office like us survive? But because it's an interesting topic, no? But actually staying very, very small and do these kind of projects demands a certain engagement and a certain involvement, which is the opposite of the usual kind of like architect's dream. When you have a project small, you do this kind of thing where you're starting your career. And then you grow, and the more you grow, the more you have a little bit of resources, and then you do bigger buildings. And yeah, we're really not interested in doing big buildings. I mean, yeah, doing this thing is as important. You don't see it, but it's a very, very beautiful piece of concrete that was poured yesterday, and it's just there. So for us, this is important as any building, actually, or any installation or whatever.
He asked about top. Top also means quality. So that none of this means that there's less quality. It still means you're improving every day. And how do you do that in a small scale? Because you need some engagement. Is the workshop the way, or?
Maybe I can start. I don't know. I don't think there's any top, actually. I mean, what does it mean to be at the top? I have no clue. But and probably I'm personally not that interested in being at the top of anything. So yes, I mean, I think we engage as much as we can in every aspects of what we do in different ways. Yes, of course, our projects, some of them are really bad. Some of them are okay, some of them are good, and we try our best to find the good conditions to what we do, with mistakes as well. But yeah, I think there is no top perspective in my case, but I'm a bit older. We can go down in age, go back and forth, see what top means, or being at the top or whatever.
No, I also don't believe in top, but I think at least for me in the office, a big aspect is just having also fun and experimentation. I mean, also as Daniel was saying, just failure also sometimes, which you can see this beautiful rock here, but actually behind, just there around the pillar, there is also two that are, for me, not maybe a bit less nice. But I think we just keep playing with experimentation and different scale, and I think it's always just about thinking on this various scale where we can afford also always to have new stuff also in mind.
Maybe Luisa, you want to say a word about maybe your expectations? I don't know, when you were coming to the office too.
Yeah, I think, and Galliane already touched it a bit, is for me, it's also that maybe when we speak of top in this sense of like growing office, making like bigger and bigger challenging projects, at some point, as an architect, you fall into this routine because you don't have enough time to question yourself and what you do. You don't have enough time to have informal conversation with your colleagues. And that's maybe what I value about Bureau and my experience in the office, is that I was there for quite short time compared to the history of the whole office. It was several months, but even in this like short period of time, we experienced a lot of projects that were like quite new for the office. And it's always like new challenge. And what I really appreciated is like not having fear of going to something you haven't done before. And I think this is the privilege you can really experience if you have like this smaller office based on very strong relationship with people around you. So for me, yeah, it's maybe not the top in terms of construction or like scale of the building, but it's about trying a lot of things maybe for the first time. And yeah, what Pierre says, I could sign every word about being playful, not scared about making mistakes or fails.
Okay, so my question, you were just talking about like answering the previous question, and you told that during your projects you had a lot of good ones, bad ones, and mistakes. And I was kind of wondering which project is like the one that it's out there in the world, but you kind of know that it's a mistake, or like there's a little mistake in there and you will like change it. It's not really noticeable to people, but you know it in your heart. So like, and if you can show it to us, maybe possibly.
They're not published, we hide them. No, yeah, I'm going to tell something here. That's a very good question. I'm thinking because I have to watch my words. And now, I know. That's why I don't want to. You want to answer?
No, go for it.
of course, what happens is in the office, it happens like in any office, that at one point you need a bit of money, all right? Because sometimes things go smooth, sometimes things go a little bit less smooth, and especially in our case where we don't have like so many projects on which we can project our finances very, very far. So we're not looking at 2 years ahead of calm in terms of finances. So and I'm sorry, it would be a little bit of blurry response nevertheless, but we have accepted, I would say a couple of times, if things go well in the office, if we have enough money to pay everyone, it's okay. But we actually refuse this kind of project, but it has happened quite recently. And I'm gonna not look the colleague with whom, yeah, okay. he could answer actually. But we accepted a commission for a very big brand of low cost, fast fashion, let's call it. Actually, it was not directly with them, but it was with an art direction company that commissioned us, and it was, for me, it was a very horrible experience. Something that I would have not wanted to do, and it was, it was a bit of money. We wanted to have it, and it was just actually for a show, like a simple scenography for the launch of a new collection of the brand, and this is the kind of thing that. It hurts somehow. I don't know. Maybe we have to ask Todor what he thinks. Yeah, I mean, you want to say something, Todor? Because he was with me. He was actually in Berlin, and I was coming back from 9 months of beautiful months of Canada where I was teaching. And, I landed in Europe, and I actually met Todor in Berlin physically, because we had been chatting by Zoom all the time. And for me, it was tough, but it was better for him, I think. He had a better experience.
No, I mean, the experience for me was not, the people there were very questionable in a sense. I had a lot of questions about what's going on in Berlin or generally. But as previously Luisa said, like the way that I experimented with this project, and I had the experience to experiment, the freedom to experiment with Daniel and Galliane and Karin in the office, was quite enriching for me. Even though at the end the outcome of the project was like, it was a little bit stressful, and like the people were there like not the nicest in a way. But I mean, for me it was like more of a thing of a experience that I value in a sense, because I saw a lot of stuff that you would never see usually. But that was my experience. Maybe a little bit better than Daniel's, but yeah.
Yeah, if I can just add something, Daniel was really sick with this situation, but we had an issue in the office. We needed money, so at one point you have to decide what can we do. And I mean, maybe a lot of offices are in this situation, and of course this is really valuable. And at one point, I'm really happy that we can do this kind also of project. Sometimes we don't take maybe the best decision for the office, but at one point it was valuable for you. So, I mean, it's not completely losing time.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Well, but you were really sick with this. And we never published the project.
Sorry, guys. I have to ask you to elaborate on that, because that's very interesting. A little bit kind of a provocative question. Why don't you want to show this? Because probably if it was a bad experience for you, why don't you want to showcase that this was? I mean, without naming or like without blaming the company or like the client or something, but like it's experience. You made a decision. You had a project, good or bad. I don't know, like some certain outcome. Because like otherwise, if you kind of filter all these problematic projects, or not the ones that you would love to kind of do all the time, and like you do basically, you kind of filter that. It seems like your work is kind of very clean and very smooth, and like, I mean, this is a part of being an architect. However you want to be an architect, but like that's why is it for you? Why don't you kind of want to hide it?
Well, in this case particularly, and I must confess that it's a rare case, so we don't do this very often. I in the past 10 years, maybe this has happened 2 times, maybe, or not even, no. So actually, we don't even have images, I must say. Maybe I have even in my iPhone, I don't have so many images. Maybe Todor has some, and he can share them with us. But we don't.
No. But I asked for images, for picture. I asked to Daniel because the time was too short, so we were not able to just send the Dylan Pernou, who's taking picture normally for the office. So it was really too short, and the timing wasn't really good because we just went back for Canada. So at one point, I just asked to Daniel, please take picture. And he completely blocked. So we don't have picture because he refused to do it. But we would like to have picture of the project. I never saw the project.
But it's not. I mean, we don't filter so much. I mean, yes, we filter in terms of image. This one is a case, clearly. I mean, it's not even a filter, it's that we don't have the material. I mean, we could show drawings. So for project, that wouldn't be a problem. We have to go to the Dropbox and find. But we don't filter so much. We sense of the photography and what we do, because of course the photography is a very special moment of all of our projects. I don't know, any of them, but so we have a very strong relation to image making through photography. But there's not much that we hide somehow. We so far our economy is fragile, but it's still okay. So we managed to do what we do with the people that work with us, and that's kind of our luxury and our risk. The risk is that sometimes, like on this case, we really are at the edge of needing very urgently money, but on the other hand, our luxury is to do small things that kind of like make the office survive somehow. So I'm sorry, I'm really not trying to hide. I'm sorry, but but thank you for the question. I mean, it's for any office, it is an issue, and this is why, despite the manifesto, I tend not to judge so much. I mean, I'm very critical personally about much architecture, but at the end of the day, I know what it takes to to have an office. Even if you're 2 or 3 or 50 people, it's difficult. It's difficult, especially when, I mean, I don't know how fees are here, but usually the fees are complicated, in relation to the work what we do and the hours that we put into our profession. It doesn't look like that, really, huh? So there's an enormous amount of work from everyone that has an office. So this I'm totally conscious about it.
From my point of view, the greatness of man is seen in his ability to affect the world, like the people around him, positively. So it was interesting. So I'm curious, is there a message you want to tell or something tell to the world, or make a change somewhere?
I'm not sure I'm the good person to answer, though. I'm super pessimistic, but I don't know. I try to believe when I work with all the people also, and to believe also in the collaborative also that now we are also doing in the workshops. I mean, believing in that everyone can bring something else on the table. And just try to be optimistic. I mean, this is what I try, but then Galliane is sometimes shouting at me that I would be a bit more optimistic, and that would be nice.
Yeah, I wanted to show this very quickly. No message to the world, on my case. Maybe try to work with the people around us very closely. I come from a generation that believed very, very. I mean, I come from one of the worst generations. I was born in 72, so from 70 on, many disasters going on. So I come from a generation also who believed very strongly in globalization. So I'm trying to cure myself as much as I can from that concept. So no big messages, just I don't want to say anything about Armenia. I want to work with you as a student, learn from you, not from Armenia as a concept. So here we have 12 students and part of the team, and NPATAK and LFA. I don't need to know about Armenia or what Armenia is or not is. I just want to hang around with you guys, you know, and that for me, that's enough. And if I'm showing this project is because this is a very temporary project that has that strength somehow of being, in my opinion, incredibly important, at least when we did it. But at the same time, maybe quite insignificant in the impact, maybe as a global project. It's a project that we did, it's a temporary installation, and I'm showing this in purpose, maybe the first image, that we did quite a long time ago. And in a context of a landscape festival, landscape art and architecture festival happening in Geneva. It was a competition, so there were like 12 projects or something like that that won the competition. We were one of them, and it was a temporary installation on a part of Geneva that is developing quite strongly. And so the idea was to bring some sensitivity, thank you, some sensitivity to the population of this more, is not really peripheral, but you know, to the part of the city that was going to be urbanized strongly, and how landscape and gardening and all these things could help to understand the whole environment. And we took, I don't know if there's a drawing, no, there's not drawing. So we took the drawing of a very classical fountain from Aldo Brandini, which is one of the main Renaissance villas in Rome, and has exactly that shape. And we transformed that fountain in a fountain of spirulina. I don't know if you know what a spirulina is. Spirulina is one of the superfoods, or a super ingredient that can be grown. It looks like this when it's grown. Wait, yeah, this is the paste when it's grown, and actually it's many times used in many places in the world where nutrition is difficult to create. You know, spirulina, is it popular here? You usually have it in pills, actually. So it's a green algae that you can grow quite easily, and this is what we did in the fountain. So instead of having this idea of the classical Roman Renaissance culture fountain, we transform it into a micro agricultural item that could actually feed the people. So the idea was not only to show the beauty of the form of Romans, but actually do workshops, which we did with you see it here, but we actually were working with someone who was specialized on this. And we created this workshop with kids and lots of families in the park in Geneva where you could learn about this superfood. All that to say that, you know, but then it was gone, you know, it was temporary. It lasted for like 6 or 8 months, and that was it. So do I have the ambition to bring a message to someone? No. But during the time of the workshops, like the time of the workshop here, maybe we can do something together and learn something together, and I think that's enough. I mean, for me. I don't know, Luisa, you want to say something from a more, you know, maybe I don't know what the aspirations of the students are everywhere also, because sometimes, yeah, we believe in this changing the world thing.
I think this like concept, or like maybe this is the thing that is still quite present in the architecture field, and maybe mostly in the universities, is this type of thinking that us architects, we often tend to say that like we are these magical creatures that have the capacity to solve all the world problems with buildings or whatever. And I think this is something which is still quite present even in the academic field and in the way we do projects in school, even though now it starts to change. But what was for me really enriching in this internship experience is also discovering that maybe when you do a project, when you build house for one family, or I don't know, one apartment for someone, it's not like the project that will solve world hunger or something, but maybe in a scale of everything what's happening, when I could observe like the way of Bureau, how they care about people they work with, and how they care about every detail in a small house, or all of us care. Maybe by the end, like these little moments, very special moments where we create like a safe space for one specific family, and we create like, let's say, better happy moments for them on daily basis, it's already start something. And quite often in the real progress, it's much more than just dreaming about these big projects that might be never realized. So, and I would just repeat everything what everyone says is like also this workshop. I think the moment of those like small conversations we have, maybe not even the ones we do in the projects, but the ones we have on a beer in the evening are something that will inspire us to do something important. So yeah, that's what I could maybe add to it. The fact that the architecture and the changing the world doesn't have to be about these big scale global projects, but also every day how we talk to people and what we create with them.
I wanted to ask about this paragraph that I read here about culture and history. I wanted to ask if culture and history of the locality plays any role in your design process, or do you just put it aside and invent something new? And if so, what inspires you, if not the local culture or history? Can you elaborate on this part of the manifesto, please?
I think there is a general background in the office and the people we work with in the office of being pretty curious about many things that surround us. I think I really believe, but if someone really doesn't think case should stand up, that we share something with I think all of our collaborators of not having a hierarchy of what good or bad culture is. So, for instance, we have a lot of fights with Pierre about Kanye West because I like his rap, but I don't like the man, and he likes all of it. So, and we have like very passionate, and it's a very interesting debate, and we can debate like that it's as valid as talking, in our opinion, as of Le Corbusier, who it's important or not important. I don't know, something that we're trying clearly to deconstruct, and this is what is written very lightly in this here. I think is the idea that the history of architecture, because I on my side I am quite passionate about architecture, even if I am critical about it, but we're trying to deconstruct this history of figures, who are the heroes all the time, because in architecture we always only talk about heroes and buildings, what are the masterpieces, this notion of masterpiece, which is, in my opinion, very negative, because, there are many things that are so incredibly intelligent and interesting in design that they're not considered masterpieces. I'm going to give you a small example of something that we just saw with Galliane, and actually we stopped for a few minutes to see it, and almost like we wanted to draw it, is the small barriers that are now located in the street. Just that there's a parade or something today, and you have what? A festival, okay. So in order to stop the traffic, they placed these very, very small barriers made in metal. They're really beautiful. I mean, with very, very thin metal tubes. Yeah, Hayek is really being astonished. But anyway, and I've never seen so thin metal and so beautifully done. And this is done by, I don't know who, and I don't know, some smith, some metal worker. But they're really, really cool. And and I'm really not joking, these barriers might appear in our world someday. They're going to come back, I'm quite sure. And I personally want to believe that this is as important as Louis Kahn. Sorry, even though I like Louis Kahn, but I think it's okay. We have to deconstruct all of this history that has marked, and some of it is really interesting. Some of them we have to be a little bit more careful and find new perspectives of how to look at it. And so yes, history theory has a very strong component of the office and the discussions, but all of it, all of it, not only these 50 figures that we have in our history books, that are also written by a few figures and not so many actually. So I think it's important to deconstruct them somehow. That was it clear? Yeah, it was clear? No? I don't know if it was very clear.
Okay, this question is kind of a translation, but I'm also wondering. So in most of your projects, you kind of put the accent and the concept around the textures and the materials. And so I guess the main thing that we're wondering about is, does the inspiration come from the materials and like the contrast that you use in your project? And also, I guess, another question is if you're maybe experimenting with materials yourself and have maybe a goal of creating a new material for architecture, because I think that the exhibitions kind of give you the opportunity to experiment with them and maybe then bring to a bigger scale in a like worldwide architecture. So that's like I would like for you to expand kind of on that topic.
Thank you for the question. Actually, I want to bring someone else actually on scene. Yes, but we have someone in the office right now who can answer that better. Is Jeremy around? Jeremy? I mean, I take the opportunity to thank Jeremy because he's actually the head of the workshop, and he's done pretty much everything so all of this can happen. So he will maybe not talk about the office but it doesn't matter. But yeah, he's the guy who made most of the workshops happen. So
thank you for inviting me to the stand. Concerning materials, I'd say I'll answer personally, because for me, I'd say when I was a student, in the end of my master's, materials is what drove my whole master's thesis. So now when I approach architecture, I definitely try and go from the material. I try and think of it as, I try and be as locally sourced, and I think I find materials somehow very inspiring, personally. So there's one way is using the material, and the other one is also challenging it. So this is why doing the workshop, I think it's a great platform to also be able to experiment, because one thing is taking a material as it is, and the other one is challenging it. So, this is why we just took some hay and we poured concrete in and try and reinforce it somehow, trying putting tooth pigments. And I think that's a means of also creating a form of architecture and just developing the practice also. And what else can I say? There's so much you can say about materials. But yeah, I'd say the office also, I've been working in the office for a bit, and I think they get also very inspired by the rawness of the material somehow. And I think that's very nice to not hide the materials, really having some honesty. And the materials also telling a story, right? Because each material has a life cycle and it has a story of its own. So the idea is, how do you express it in your projects? I think that's interesting on how they use it. There you go. Then I found that.
Thank you. I want to maybe pass the mic to Pierre again. You can maybe talk about one of the projects that he's leading that has almost no material at all. Yeah, you want to say a word? Pierre is actually leading one of the projects that are very important in the office. It's a competition that we won a few years, not 2 years back, I guess, and that will be built actually this winter. There was a bit of a bumpy thing, but we learned today that actually it's going on continuously. So it's good news, and it's a project that is really important for us, and that actually uses almost like, very little material as well, but maybe you want to talk about it.
No, yes, I can. Let's go. But no, I think here we did also maybe change a bit the logic also, in a way of material material in a way. So as you can see, we are mainly using three materials actually, and it's also maybe also in this logic of just being strategic also with the enterprise we are working with, and minimize also coordination in a way. So mainly we have the base, which is made in stone, and then there is these huge metallic structures, and then there is glass, basically. So we try to focus also only on those three materials, and it's where I think one aspect of the office can also enter this discussion, which is starting to understand how you can detail those kind of design and projects. Basically, especially I was not used to think in metal also, and I think it's where you start to just watching a bit around, as Daniel was saying also maybe before, and just try to think how stuff connect. And I think it was also an inspiration for us, for the Lighthouse, and also go in rather a simplification of the project, and being in that case super in kind of infrastructure thought also.
Hi. In most of your projects, I see that many of them are meant to be temporary. Like you mostly care about the process, and you less care about the outcome and how long will it last. I wonder how comfortable you feel working with heritage and something that is better preserving and giving like a second life, rather than working with something that is temporary.
Yeah, we have not worked yet. I'm trying to think so much in like pure historical context where history it's important. One thing that it's quite clear for us is that we prefer to build, to renovate or to build on something that exists already, rather than to build a new, if we can. So we build actually a new very, very little. There's not much new buildings that we are working on. But I do think that the second life that you were referring to is extremely important. And yeah, this is also one of the aspects that it's interesting, because it's also very problematic. And I could imagine that in places like Yerevan, probably it's also quite a difficult component. How do you deal with history? I don't know if your question was going that way. How you deal with history, historical monuments, buildings, what is to be preserved or not. Those questions that are very political somehow as well, because who decides what's a good building or not? Who decides what is to be kept or not kept? Is only, for instance, we have a strong tendency, and this is, I guess, everywhere in the world, to keep only the monuments. But actually people don't live in monuments, so are the houses where people live less important to be seen as historical places than a very, very old church? I'm not so sure. And again, we come to this idea of the what is important in architectural history. Is only monuments, or housing buildings that might be badly built, but in my opinion, historically have the same value as anything else. There was this anecdote that I haven't been able to track back when Rem Koolhaas was working in Moscow and in Russia, and someone asked him, what would you be your strategy to decide what are the buildings to be kept or not in Moscow? And he grabbed a bunch of confetti and threw them in a map, and he said, "You keep those." And it might sound a bit ridiculous or playful, but actually, I think it's a very interesting proposal. It's like, all of it is good. You could also say that, no? Is that because again, monuments have been done and built by a very precise type of population, usually quite dominant, no? So yeah, but in our case, again, the temporary thing, what you're saying is also very interesting, because, for instance, in the other presentation that I had here, we call it public space, and temporary structures are, or collective landscapes. And for us, for instance, maybe I can show this one. For us, an exhibition, art exhibition that we design, the scenography or something, is a public space. So it might not be as important as renovating a monument or an old building, or even a small typical typological chalet as the one before. But actually, probably in terms of public impact, there are more people confronted to culture in this exhibition than in much of the, let's say, timeless architecture that appears in many places. So, you know, how people relate to our projects, in instance, in art exhibitions for which we do the scenography, you know, it's questioning, because there are a lot of people going to see these things. In the 50s in Italy, for instance, there were a bunch of architects. Maybe you've heard, I mean, many people have heard about Carlo Scarpa, and they know 2 or 3 buildings that he has built, but actually he didn't like buildings so much. I mean, what he wanted to do is doing exhibitions as a kind of like a very strong involvement and engagement to change the Italian culture of the time in the 40s and 50s. So, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm divagating a little bit for your question, but
Thank you.
Could you share the framework for preservation? So at Bureau, what is the framework for preservation? For example, for that house, the Swiss house, more from a manifesto perspective, right? You're preserving based on what moral points?
I'm not so sure that we actually have a very fixed and determined framework. Again, we like to think that many things are to be preserved or not to be preserved in the same way. I take it as a provocation, not as a definite answer, but I think the barrier next door, you know, could be looked at as a very interesting vernacular or, you know, kind of like DIY moment of design, maybe not architecture, but design, that could be as valuable as a, I don't know, Neolithic stone. So, you know, because a Neolithic stone at the time when it was actually built, or it didn't have the same value as we give it today. In this case particularly, this is a very interesting project because we show it, but actually is one of the few projects where our client was kind of wealthy, or not kind of wealthy, but very singularly, actually, he called us to do the garden and not his main house that you don't see here. And actually, this was almost a little bit of our initiative, because this was the garage of the caretaker, actually. Garage and a little apartment up there. And we suggested to this, after doing the garden, for which we had done a lot of things. You saw it before, the garden with a sauna, a small couple of things. We suggested that, I mean, he should use this as a house, which it was very successful because some part of the family now is living there. And what we wanted to keep here, it was not only to keep, but even to enhance, it was the wood making. So I don't know if the film is somewhere around here, because you can see what, yeah, no, not sure. Anyway, basically what happened here is that we not only kept the full upside part of the chalet, all of this part, but actually we transformed it. This was done in very bad masonry. So this is wood now today. And this was the garage. And then we actually took reinforced and took all of this upper chalet out, put it here, do some work on it, and then transform the back to bring it to its original, not form, but construction logic, which was wood, and then put the chalet back in. And as you can see on the upper part, it was just look and respect. No, we didn't. I mean, there's no judgment there. Is it beautiful or not beautiful, good or bad? We just cleaned it up and painted it. So maybe that's the moral part. It's like, okay, is it beauty or not beauty? Is it good or not good? It's not like great architecture, if you ask me. You know, it's like, but why not? I mean, at the same time. So so again, I don't think we're so judgmental in what is good or not good. We work now as Luisa was mentioning, this is very, very tiny apartment that we're working on in Lisbon. And the context is not super interesting, but we try to value it as well, you know, somehow.
I saw in your examples that they seem, from the presentation, very sustainable. Is it true, or does it seem like that? Also, does it come from your personal style or your liking, or actually prioritize your designs being sustainable, and more importantly, the temporary ones, the way they could be reused or recycled?
Maybe we don't speak a lot about sustainability because it's a part of the process and of our project, but it's a purpose, but we don't speak about like a purpose. It just it goes with us along the way, and of course we take care of it, but maybe it grows and grows with the time. And also the materials and everything, we can test it with exhibition, and sometimes we reuse it. For example, when we are doing an exhibition, all the stuff that we are doing, the people there just continue to use it in a way, not in the same way, of course, but they reuse it. Or sometimes we bring back the material to our office in Lisbon, because in Lisbon it's a bigger office than in Geneva. So at one point in Lisbon, it became something quite weird, because we have a fountain in the middle of the office. We have few stuff just hanging around, and yeah, you can. But there is, at this time we had not the fountain in the middle. So now it's quite clean because it was the beginning. It's not the case anymore. So yeah, of course it's a part, but we don't speak a lot about it because it's just the natural ground maybe of what we are doing.
But this is something, to come back to your first question, this is something that we could really improve in the, because the sustainability is not a topic. In our case, not so much, because we build so little and we do a lot of temporary stuff. But yes, it is something that we can really improve in our approach to scenography, to installations, and sometimes we're a little bit too heavy on that, you know, in the sense that we could think about reuse and make it different, you know, have a different approach to materials that could improve our, ethics, let's say.
I'm sure that you have heard about the Burning Man Festival. I want to know your opinion about that festival at general, because people represent themselves, their art, make an exhibition, and then destroy all parts of exhibition, burn it. Will you take a part at that festival, and what would you tell to the people, and what would you show?
I mean, it has not happened that that we are called to be part of Burning Man. It's not a festival that I particularly appreciate somehow, because it's one of these festivals that started like with a very strong take on a community in the 1970s that is commonly named as hippie community, hippies, that I'm very interested in personally. But now it has taken another dimension. So it's kind of, it's extremely expensive to be there. The whole fair has become kind of like a business kind of, or entertainment for business. You know that many people from the Silicon Valley, they rent the booths and the spaces to kind of like go crazy and take some drugs and be naked, to be out of the routine in the Silicon Valley. So, I don't know. It's not a place that I particularly appreciate in that sense. So I don't know what would happen. I don't want to put. If they would call us to work with them, I don't know if I would say yes or no. We would have to see precisely the conditions. But again, it's not. This one is something that we have done in Geneva 2 times, and it's a very nice festival of independent art spaces, so places a little bit like this one or even much smaller, and they actually organize a festival to gather all of these very alternative initiatives and have a festival about it. And basically we did kind of like a master plan, as you can see, and do some small rules, and that's it. And then they kind of like take over. And this is in a very big square in Geneva. So we did a couple of those. And yeah, actually the containers are just simply rented. So they're not bought or anything. So it was a whole different approach to that. And we have done a lot of festivals as well.
I just have to come back to that barrier that you saw on the street. So let's talk about that. No, the question is about basically you saw an object on a street or somewhere in a context, and you liked it as a design object or as geometry or material, or I don't know, maybe reflections of on that metal or something. But that particular object represents a function and the meaning and the context. So basically, when I see that barrier, probably it connects to the memory of, I don't know, street protests and I don't know, police violence or restriction, or I don't know, certain limits, or I mean, this links the list can go and on and on. So do you detach that kind of meaning from objects, and generally in your projects, do you kind of, and for example here during this workshop we've been discussing Hazarashen or other kind of very kind of talked about subjects in Armenia, or like in any other of your projects? Do you kind of detach the object, geometry, form, material, etc., from the memory, heritage, I don't know, all the kind of non-physical connotations of that presence? Or is it important for you anyways? Because like you said, like maybe this object might come back in your future project somehow. Do you think that this might kind of trigger kind of memories for certain people who recognize certain history in that, or it's not important, it's just an object?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I think maybe, and I'm reflecting as you're speaking, maybe this is what fascinated us about this barrier, maybe, is that it's so light that it doesn't fulfill at all the function for which it's made, right? It's so thin that it doesn't look at all like anything that is going to stop anything, So maybe that's I'm just again reflecting. No, I mean, I could show one project here, but I don't want to show it, that we did in 2014, and unless you want to see it, that is called Maidan. I don't want to show it because now, of course, it was at the time of the protest in Maidan, and we used a very iconical figure of those protests, which was the shield, to do an installation. And I'm not filtering. I'm just saying that this project now has acquired a very, very strong connotation that is difficult to control, in my opinion. So, but it's still there, of course, and it's so no. I mean, let's say the whole social, cultural, political context, and yeah, this is also very interesting when we talk about context, no, and in architecture, is that there's not only the physical context. That's exactly as you're saying. A barrier here does not mean the same thing that a barrier or block in Iran or in the Spain I grew up in the Basque Country, so and all of these things can seem very, very different in different contexts, and we try to as much as we can to listen to those contexts as well, without just stealing or appropriating just the object without its more general context.
Yeah, and we had few discussions about this, about other objects that we found really nice or really well shaped with a interesting design, and we had few times discussion about this, and of course we reflect after our discussion, and this is really important. And when Daniel say maybe at one point we reuse it doesn't mean that we will take this, but we have it in mind in a way, but also what you are saying now, of course this is important. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, maybe the trace of our trip here is reflected by that kind of thing more than Hazarashen, in a sense. So it's a whole culture. This is why we love doing what we're doing here, is that you kind of like get to know the small portion of the culture very differently, with the small perceptions, not with big ones. Time to go. I think people are leaving, so maybe it's time to call it a day. What? Unless, of course. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Well, thanks. Thanks for the participation. It was really good to have all your involvement.
Yeah, I don't want to say much after you here, but thank you everyone for participation. I think this format also reflecting to this kind of new way of having a lecture. I think it's very interesting. Maybe we are not used to that much, because actually during the architectural lectures, generating questions and asking. It's not that easy. But thank you very much for being here and for sharing your time and thoughts with us. Thank you very much.